Okay, let's talk about the real reason I watched this show. So, Broadchurch, done, wrapped up, seen it all of Series 1. I'm certainly not going to rush out and see Series 2 and 3, not because first series of Broadchurch was bad, but because I've now achieved my actual goal in watching this, which was to try and get a better sense of Chris Chibnal as a showrunner, because he's taking over Doctor Who, which is my favorite TV show, and his Doctor Who and his Torchwood output, both of which he worked on, I didn't feel like they gave me a very good sense, especially because he actually hasn't written anything for the show in a while. He hasn't written anything since Matt Smith's tenure. So I really wanted to try and get a better sense of what he's good at so I can try and figure out whether it makes me feel better or worse now that he's taking over Doctor Who. And I kind of still don't know how I feel. But I can quantify why now. Before it was just because I lacked a point of reference. I lacked just an understanding of a recent show that was completely his. Now I have that, and I still don't know how that makes me feel about him running Doctor Who. Here's why. This showed me there are definitely things that he is good at as a writer. He is good at building believable, well-rounded characters. He is good at giving shades of gray. He is very good, for the most part, episode 5 notwithstanding, at giving us a serialized progression of a story. He's good at all that stuff. The problem is, what he's good at is not what I personally at least think Doctor Who should be. I mean, the elephant in the room is I don't think Doctor Who should become a serialized story. I just don't. I mean, if you want to do stronger connected tissue, I mean, there are ways to do that. I've talked about that a little bit before. I mean, a real good option would be a quest narrative, something like the Key to Time storyline back in the Fourth Doctor's era that allows you to still have the Doctor bouncing around all these different settings, dealing with completely different sets of characters every time, but that each time the Doctor completes whatever she's there to do for each one, it contributes to a greater cause, a greater mission. Like that degree of serialization, which isn't even really serialization, it's just the connective tissue between stories as opposed to the mystery boxes, which is what we've usually gotten. I'm all in favor of something like that, but a truly serialized story, something that it's not finished. It's not finished until you watch the entire thing. I don't want Doctor Who to be that. I love coming in and getting usually a pretty complete and ideally satisfying viewing experience every single episode. And knowing that, especially now knowing that it's going to be 10 episodes instead of 13 and they're going to be a little bit longer, it really makes me nervous. And even when I look at the other things that Broadchurch showed me that Chibnal is good at in terms of developing characters over time, I don't want the Doctor to be stuck with a supporting cast, episode after episode as they get built and delved into. So, I mean, there's the companions, obviously. And maybe this explains why we've got 3 of them, which I've said before seems like a lot to me. I know the show has done 3 companions before, but it always feels like overcrowding to me. But maybe that's why he's done that, so that he has more recurring characters to work through, and I'm hoping it's not an indication that he's going to try and build some kind of additional supporting cast that we keep seeing over and over and over and over again. I like recurring characters, but one thing I never want Doctor Who to do is to feel tied down. I don't want it. What I love about this show, fundamentally, if I truly break it down, is the fact that it can go anywhere, any when, and be about almost anything. I love that freedom. So it's one of the reasons Series 8 really annoyed me, because no matter where they went, because Clara wasn't staying in the TARDIS to keep traveling, the Doctor had to keep coming back to Earth. I kind of hated that tether. And arguably it's been there with the other companions before, but it was really emphasized with Clara that he had to keep coming back here to pick her up over and over and over again. I don't like it feeling restricted in that way. I wouldn't like it to feel restricted narratively, which is what, to me at least, a serialized story would feel like. It feels like you are shrinking down and saying, this is what this series of Doctor Who will be. It'll just be this. And there's also the concern when you do a serialized story, like, if you don't nail it, you don't get a reprieve next episode. When the story shifts episode to episode, shifts tone, shifts setting, shifts supporting cast, a story not working doesn't sink the ship because you get something new next time. When it's just another piece of the same continuing story, the overall story has to work. And if it doesn't, that's kind of it. And I guess I'm most nervous now, especially, and again, all this is supposition. We don't really know exactly how Chris Chibnal is approaching it. What we know that he's done, he's engaging in a writer's room style of handling the new series, which is new because usually Doctor Who was written basically on assignment from the showrunner. The episodes would go out to various writers and they just write it. They didn't have a group writer's room for the actual process of writing episodes. He's bringing that in, which is kind of more in line, certainly with American television. I don't know how many British shows use a writer's room, but he's doing that. And like I said, we're getting more companions. We're getting a shorter series with longer episodes. And of course, now we have a woman doctor. And I really worry that this is too much new stuff at once. And I don't mean that in like some sort of superficial, no one can handle this much change at once. No, of course we can. But why it makes me nervous is if any one of these new changes doesn't work, any one of them, this many companions, this short a series, this method of writing, and who knows whatever else he plans to bring to the table that's new and different, if any of these new things don't work, there is a depressingly large chunk of people who are going to blame the fact that it's a female doctor. Even if there ends up being a problem that is not her, that's still going to get blamed. And I don't want that to happen. I want a female doctor to get as fair a shake as possible. And I really worry about all these other changes he's planning to bring, some of them at least, potentially not working, and then because we go, well, the 13th Doctor's run wasn't very good, is very easily transformed into the 13th Doctor wasn't very good. So I would really hate to see that happen. And in some ways, and again, Broadchurch was good. And it does show me that he can be a good showrunner. But the strengths that it showed me are now make me more nervous about having him run Doctor Who than I was before, which I didn't expect. I thought if I was going to end up more nervous, it was going to be because Broadchurch wasn't very good, but it was. And yet here I am, more nervous than I was before, just because the way in which Broadchurch was good is so different from the way in which Doctor Who is good when it is good, or at least to my preferences of what Doctor Who is. And maybe other folks really would love a serialized approach. And you know what? That's fine. I can only speak from my perspective. But speaking as someone who loves this show and loves the general formatting and the freedom that the general formatting has allowed the show to have, I look at what he's already said he's going to do and what Broadchurch has shown me Chibnal is good at, and I worry about a lot of really fundamental changes. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm talking about much bigger changes than a female doctor, because at the end of the day, I don't think that is as fundamental a change to the show as some people think it is. But restructuring it, just doing a completely different narrative approach, that is a fundamental change. And that makes me nervous. I'm not saying it can't work. It could. Anything can work. Any idea that any showrunner, filmmaker, writer, whatever, any idea can potentially work. It can also potentially go very, very wrong. And I'm not saying that it will, but I'm now just more nervous, which not ideal. So those are my thoughts on that. That's how, having finished Broadchurch, my thoughts on Chibnal have adjusted, changed, possibly been made a little bit worse. Dang it. So, Chris Chibnal, and end of series 1 of Broadchurch, your overview thoughts of the show as a whole, how it did or doesn't, how it does or doesn't impact your thoughts on how Chibnal may or may not run Doctor Who. Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's all the stuff to do, such as like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, because people are saying I'm not showing up in the subscription feed these days. And, consider supporting me on Patreon and follow me Twitter. I do a podcast with my partner Liz. Links for all that stuff is down in the description, plus some other stuff as well. I have t-shirts. So until next time, this council is adjourned.